It's a beautiful morning. It looks like who's going to be here is here. And if anybody's not here, let us know. Let me just, before we call the roll, just a couple of quick, and I know this is out of turn, but we would ask that you turn your cell phones off, or at least put them on vibrate. And also, we have 3 mics now, and when you're talking, there's a mic in front of Saguaro, there's over here, okay, there's 3 microphones. So if you can remember to kind of speak into the microphone when you're talking, that would help us greatly. So cell phones on vibrate if you can't turn them off altogether. And then the other is to try to speak into the microphones without looking too obvious. We don't want you to look, but just project is on. All right, with that, we'll call the roll.
Pledge.
Yes.
Pledge.
Pledge of Allegiance.
No, we have. Oh. Sorry, Pledge of Allegiance. Yes. And I've already asked Gerald Adams if he would do Pledge of Allegiance. Gerald, our new commissioner, sorry.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If I'm a little bit out of kilter, I'm having periodontal surgery at 9:40, which I'm not looking forward to. And in exactly 40 minutes, I have to take the Xanax, which is in my pocket. So then the meeting will deteriorate more than it already has. So that's what the water is here for. So I apologize to you in advance. It's not something I'm looking forward to, but one of those things one does. All right, now I guess we can go to, has the agenda been posted?
It has, Mr. Chairman.
All right, very good. Then to the roll call. Thank you, Nadia.
Commissioners Adams.
Yes.
Altman excused, Breslin excused, Burke,
Yes.
Clarkson,
Here.
Corcoran,
Here.
Dada excused, Feldman excused, Freeman,
Yes.
Hedrick,
Here.
Cohn excused, Hughes, here, Jones,
Here.
Pattison excused, Pye, here, Reason,
Here.
Schmitz excused, Suero.
Here.
Thank you.
And we have a quorum. Acceptance of the agenda. Have you all had a chance to review the agenda? Any changes to that or requests?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Peter has moved for the acceptance of the agenda. Who seconded? Okay, very good. Okay. Pardon me?
Mention his name, who's second?
Oh, well, no, we got that. Okay, great. On to the minutes of the meeting of June the 12th. You have those in your packet. You had a chance to review those.
So moved to accept the amendments.
Okay, got it. Second, Peter seconds. Okay, very good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the minutes are approved as presented. We come now to the chairman's report.
Public comment.
Pardon me?
Public comment.
Yes. I really am nervous about my dental work this morning. For those of you who are new, this is not normally how I run meetings. I have witnesses throughout the room who can tell you. My mind is focused on this procedure that I'm not looking forward to. So in any event, yes, thank you, Peter. Public comments. Do we have any public comments? Has anybody requested a public? Okay, seeing none. We do have presentations coming up, however. Thank you for keeping me honest. I didn't realize I was quite this nervous about, I don't like dentists, what can I tell you? All right. No, but dentists are good people. I don't want the record to suggest anything. All right. For fear of moving on, we are now at the chairman's report. Correct? Thank you. All right. Well, we would like to welcome the new members. We have, and in fact, I'm going to ask them in a minute, they don't know this yet, to give us a little background. But we have new members, Gerald Adams from Palm Springs. Gerald is over here. Let's see, the other new members, we have Todd Burke from Palm Springs. Todd is here. We have another new member, David Feldman, who could not be with us today. I've had a conversation already with... Pardon me? And Bodilla, okay. And, okay, we also have Paul Bodillo?
Yes.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
Okay, Paul will be a new member from Indian Wells, but he's not going to be appointed until July 24th. So he can't sit with us, but he is here this morning to observe and to get the lay of the land. So thank you for joining us, Paul. So those are our 3 new members. And what we tend to do too, in fact, I think we'll just move into that and then I'll come back to the other announcements. What we tend to do is to ask you if you will take 3 to 5 minutes and just kind of briefly describe your background, experience, what makes you excited about being on the Airport Commission. So Gerald, we'll start with you.
Sure. I worked for US Airways on the East Coast. I'm in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh for 20 years. I was in-flight purser. I also worked at many training programs involving FAA, safety training. After 9/11, we started a whole new division as far as safety and terrorist assessment. I was involved with that. I did military charters to Kuwait for several years during the war, Gulf War. It was quite an experience. So I come with a background of that. So it's unique in both in-flight safety, FAA certification training. My partner was a station manager in Amsterdam and Frankfurt, and we lived in both places for several years. So I got a background of airport operations on the airline side. So going to the municipal side and experiencing all this will be sort of the flip side of that. So it's an interesting perspective I'm trying to bring to it from their side as for-profit companies. So I look forward to working with that. I currently live in Palm Springs. I've been here 6 years, and I work real estate at Caldwell Banker agent on North Palm Canyon Drive.
Great, thank you. I'm glad to have you on board. Thank you, Gerald. Todd.
Good morning, everyone. I'm a new resident of Palm Springs, just about a year. My current day job is I'm the head of communications at Tenet Healthcare. So my desk is at Desert Regional, and I run PR and media relations for all 13 hospitals that we have in the state of California. So PR is my background, although my career started right after college in the early 80s at TWA, in flight as well. Flew international for many years, and then quickly went into the communications side of TWA and was the last director of corporate communications when TWA was purchased by American Airlines in 2001. So I worked on that acquisition and that transition. And the only one offered a job from the team when the acquisition happened in 2001. So my start date to join American Airlines Corporate Communications was September 11th, 2001. A tough day for all of us, but certainly a tough one when you're joining a new company. So I was at American for 3 years and then got recruited to go to JetBlue. And I was JetBlue's Vice President of Corporate Communications in New York from 2003 until 2010. Thought I'd take a little retirement. Went to work for PG&E as their Director of External Communications, which I can tell you stories for a long time about that. And then got recruited and took a big left turn. I went to Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen and ran their communications department in Atlanta. And then my last job prior to coming here, I was the Senior Vice President of Communications at the Trade Association, Airlines for America, that represents most U.S. airlines in Washington, D.C. So I am passionate, as everyone in this room, I'm passionate about aviation, but I'm really particularly passionate about this wonderful airport, and so very happy to be here and look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Todd, welcome. Bill, have we had you yet?
Have you had me?
Have we had you? Have we had you make a presentation about yourself yet? Would you be the third this morning?
Sure. Thank you. Well, I'm Bill Reason, and I've been on the commission about 4 years representing the city of Rancho Mirage. And I've been involved in some sort of aviation all my life. When I was just a little boy, about, I don't know, 9, 10, 11 years old, whatever, my parents bought a small airplane. And so I kind of grew up riding in an airplane all my younger years. And then when I was in high school, I took formal flying lessons, got my private pilot certificate when I was 18 years old. Shortly after that, I bought my first airplane, a little 65 horsepower Luscombe. And I've owned several airplanes over the years. In fact, right now, I own a partnership in a Beach Bonanza hangar right across the field at Atlantic Aviation. So I fly that. Let's see, I served in the Navy as an air traffic controller aboard an aircraft carrier. So there's another aviation-related. And then, as far as my careers go, I had 2 careers, actually, both with the California Department of Transportation, Caltrans. First as a highway engineer, overseeing the construction of all the freeways, or most of the freeways in Orange County and southern LA County. And so I went back to flight school and earned my advanced pilot credentials. I'm a commercial pilot, flight instructor, instrument, multi-engine airplane ratings. So I transferred to the Division of Aeronautics in Sacramento, which is still part of Caltrans. If you don't know, the Division of Aeronautics is responsible for regulating all the airports in the state. Every airport must have a state airport permit, whether it's LAX or Bermuda Dunes over here. Every airport must have a state permit to operate. And since the FAA regulates the Part 139 air carrier airports, the state concentrates primarily on the general aviation airports. And this may be a surprise, but in California there are about 250 public use airports. And only about 23 of them are air carrier. The rest are general aviation airports, and that's where my job is, the Division of Aeronautics, was to oversee the safety of the general aviation airports and the permit compliance requirements, and overseeing the grant program which the state has for the general aviation airports, similar to the FAA's AIP, but on a much smaller scale, of course. I was chief pilot for the Division of Aeronautics, so we had a small fleet of airplanes that me and my staff flew to all the airports in the state doing safety inspections. So very familiar with airport activities. I consulted with airport managers at the smaller airports that needed help managing their airports. And I retired from the Division of Aeronautics as the chief of the Office of Safety Regulation Permit Compliance branch. So that's my background, and I'm glad to be here to contribute what I can to this wonderful airport.
Great, thank you, Bill. And Bill has been a great contributor to the Airport Commission. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, the next item up is the election of officers. You may recall we had the election in January because the City Council had pushed back the reappointments for 6 months during the whole process of the redistricting for the City of Palm Springs. And this puts us back, as I understand, back on schedule. So we have to have the election of officers this morning. So how does the chair manage the election of officers?
Well, absent the vice chair,
Yes.
I'd be happy to take over at this
Would you
point.
take over?
Would you like to take over?
It's appropriate for you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We're going to commence with the elections. Do I hear any nominations for chairman of the
Yes, sir.
Airport Commission?
It's my great privilege to put into nomination, renomination of our current chairman, Commissioner Jones. He's done a fabulous job since he has been elected 6 months ago. And so I ask everyone for your continued support, and I'm asking for a second.
I'll second that.
Looks good to me, thank you.
Well, before we do that, are there any other nominations? So, if there are no other nominations, we could call for a vote on the chairman of the Airport Commission. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
And let's take a count. It's unanimous. And Mr. Chairman? welcome aboard.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I guess I take over again.
You have to change.
Well, thank you for that support, and thank you, Peter, for those kind words and for the nods. And I should have put my head on the table just in case somebody didn't vote for me, but looked like everybody did. So now we move to the election of the vice chair. Is there nomination? Kathleen?
I would like to nominate Rolf Holm.
Rolf has been nominated. Rolf is the current vice chair. He wasn't able to be here this morning. Is there a second?
Second.
Do we have a second? Any other nominations for vice chair? Seeing none, do you want to call this by acclamation? We'll just nominate him. All right. Very good. So we have our vice chair. Well, thank you all for the continuing support. Just as kind of a reminder to everybody as well as the new members, I tend, what I prefer is if you want to ask a question or get into the conversation, just raise your hand, signal me. I keep a list so that nobody has to panic about trying to get into the conversation. And I'll recognize you in the order in which you've kind of raised your hand, and that seems to work out pretty well. It has worked out well for us up to now, so we'll have that. Introductions and presentations. We do have a presentation. Do you want to start?
No, this is you indicated to me within the last 10 hours that we.
Okay.
I have one.
Yeah.
What would you, young Mr.
So what
Reddy?
I would like to do is, there's nothing on your agenda today with regard to an art piece, but the Arts
Right.
Commission, in your next agenda, will be submitting a proposal to you to potentially do a piece of artwork here. So that'll be on your agenda next meeting. But what I did want to do today is I'm just going to pass out, you've got one paper in front of you, but I'm going to pass this out. Can you pass this around? Just a little bit more detail. The bottom line to this is it's a proposal that the Arts Commission is looked at. The idea is if the Airport Commission is in agreement with this, you would make a recommendation to place it or not and assist in where it would be. What this proposal here is just basically where the artist has just on a general matter taken a look of where the artist thinks they would be best placed, and then also the cost is on here. So that being said, again, there's no action to take today. It'll be formally a proposal on your next agenda. But I do think we do have an Arts Commission. Mr. Pritchard is here.
Yes.
And you may even have the artist. So if there's any, if there's something you might want to say, Mr. Pritchard, or if there's a question, you wanted to just have a general presentation to pass that out to you. Is there something you might want to add?
And if I can, before Russell begins, I have had a chance to talk with Ann Scheffer, who is also the chair of the Arts Commission. And I've also met with Russell and the artists and had an occasion to go out to look at the art piece. So it's kind of an exciting piece. So I'm glad, thank you, Dave, for outlining the process that we're to follow here. So we did ask Russell to kind of give us a brief introduction. And again, this is not an action item, but more for information and anticipation of our next meeting. And then the two artists that we have here are Linda Maxon as well as Debbie Trout.
Group,
Thank you.
like a group of people.
Okay, group. All right, Russell.
Great, thank you, Commissioners. Thanks, Dr. Reddy. My name is Russell Pritchard. I'm on the Palm Springs Public Arts Commission. You need the spelling of my name? RUSSELLPRITCHARD. So I wanted to give you just a little bit of a background on what we've been doing in the Arts Commission for the last couple of years, which has sort of led us to the point of being here to present this art installation for the airport. 2018 was the 30th anniversary of the formation of the Palm Springs Public Arts Commission. So we took our calendar year 2018 to 2019 as the celebration of the 30th year. We kicked that off with a street party downtown Palm Springs with the hashtag Imagine Art Here. So for the past year, we've been very focused on that imagination of bringing art to downtown redevelopment area, activating sites that are proposed for future development. So working with Grit Development, we organized the arrangement for the David Cerny Babies, which are in the Grit Art Pit on Museum Way downtown. We commissioned Brian Campbell to do a mural on the west-facing wall of that art pit. We worked with the museum to do an art mural with Sophia Enriquez, which is on the art park portion of the downtown park. We worked with Michael Bernberg, an artist. We did an art installation on the east lawn of the Desert Arts Center on Palm Canyon. And then we just recently hosted the 30 by 30 art show at the museum, in which we enlisted artists to imagine what they would see as art in Palm Springs for the future. So we sort of wrapped that party up in June of this year with hashtag Art Is Here. So for a calendar year 2019 to 2020, our goal is to push art from within just the downtown core area to all of the neighborhoods of Palm Springs. And we'd be very delighted to start with that at the airport with the art installation Crushing Inertia, which you have the information for in front of you. Linda Maxson and Debbie Fluke were the artists. The original size is probably a little bit large for a specific installation in the airport. So we proposed a site in the main entrance, north wall and south wall. We're very open to working with the Airport Commission for the actual placement of the piece, but Linda will speak to you briefly on what the piece means, the inspiration, and that will give you a key as to why we feel that the placement at the airport is the #1 place where it should be installed. So another thing we're going to do on the Arts Commission is continue a dialogue with various commissions throughout the city, the Airport Commission, Planning Commission, Park and Rec, so that we all can work a little more collaboratively on making this town known for all of the things it's known, but also for a very strong presence in the arts. So if Linda wants to come up for a moment, and then if there are any questions, we can answer.
Thank you. And this is Linda Maxson, M-A-X-O-N, right?
M-A-X-S-O-N.
S-O-N,
Yeah.
okay.
And first of all, thanks for all of you to take the time to look at the proposal, and thanks to Russell for considering us. I
I know.
really appreciate it. The inspiration behind the piece came in June of 2018, when we first saw the images of the children being separated from their parents at the border, and then the cages outside at the border. And it was so disturbing, and apparently this wasn't the first time this had happened. This has been going on. We didn't even realize all of this was happening until the media, of course, shows it to us. But that day, it impacted everything that we saw, everything that we did. Or it was just so heavy in our thoughts. And like a cloud hanging over. And Debbie was working on a smaller piece with some colorful stick pins that she had to transform into she was spraying a matte black over them. And that transformation of that tiny piece made me think, why not make it bigger and deliver a message? And it goes even beyond that one incident. It talks about division. And as we were doing the Pledge of Allegiance this morning, indivisible. And this country right now is very divided, and it needs to work together to solve especially that problem. It's a broken system. It's not just one side versus the other. They need to work together. And so this was our interpretation of what happened that day, the inspiration behind it. It's been in the gallery for, I think it was up for 3 months, and visited by hundreds of people that had different interpretations. We put ours off to the side, and we wanted them to feel it and experience it, walk around it, look through there's a void in between the two halves. There's a darker grays on top and the colorful balls on the bottom, and there's the division in between that you can actually see a whole different perspective on things. So we would be honored if that was the first thing that people saw when they got off the plane here. Because that's what Palm Springs is. It's diverse. That's what we want, the message we want to deliver.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Lynn. This will be on the next agenda for action. So we'll have a chance to have a more thorough discussion. Bill?
Is this going to be a permanent or on a loan temporary?
It's like 6 months.
Yes, 6 months, October 1 to the end of March of 2020.
Okay.
And may I ask just a quick question in anticipation of moving forward? Because you had the artist consideration a month. Who's covering these costs?
So the issues will be two. One, would you like it displayed and where? That's part one. And the second of all, that is the cost to do it. Now, that can happen one of two ways. The Arts Commission could pay, as they've done in the past for some pieces that have been here. That's one option. The Arts Commission will be, my sense is they would prefer the other option where they'll ask the airport fund to pay, which would, of course, would keep some of the art funds that are very limited for other pieces of art. So since the airport has the ability to pay, I'm certain that would be their request, but again, that will be something for you to consider and make a recommendation, one way or the other.
That's something just we need to know in advance, okay, as we prepare for that agenda item. Okay, this is not intended for discussion, but just a quick question.
Yes, before we would even consider cost of that, is there a maintenance, any maintenance that would be required? That would be
Just consult.
further.
Yeah, if we can have that information for their next meeting, all the related costs and expenses, that would be good for us to make the decision then. So thank you for that, Kathleen. All right, any other presentations or introductions?
No, sir.
No, sir. Okay, then we turn to the city. Thank you, Russell, and thank you, Linda, and thank you, Debbie, for all being here. So this will be then for action at the next commission meeting. City manager report, Mr. Reddy.
I will yield back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, nothing. Okay. All right, then we go on to the budget and finance report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. We had a very successful June. You saw the county of your numbers that were provided yesterday. So again, we continued last month. We had a 12% increase over the prior same month last year, and things look like they will continue to progress through the rest of the summer. So that taken into account, looking at the revenue stream, all of our categories from on the first page. From the PFCs, we're up 12% over last year. Or excuse me, PFCs were up 16%. CFCs were up 12%, and our M&O budget was up. Revenues were up 10%. The grant category was down as we had planned. We rolled those funds into this year to set those funds aside for assistance with our Take project. So our grant this year will be roughly $10 million. So that will be 2 years funds consolidated. So that will be going into next year and should help pay for the project, which we hope to have council consider it on the meeting on July 24th. Looking at the expense side, the expenses were only 4% over last year, so a modest increase, which takes us to the fund carryover. The CFC fund has almost $22 million set aside, which will be used for our Round Park project once we are underway. And we expect the design on that to be, the scope of the design to be approved this fall. And we'll start that process, which will be very exciting in the near future. PFC funds have been used to pay off the existing debt. And speaking of the PFC funds, that project, the bond proceeds was bond funds very quickly. The true interest rate that was brought in was 2.69%. So very pleased with the results of the bond sale. The financial teams led by Suzanne Harrell did an analysis at the end and determined that purchasing insurance was beneficial. So that was done. We brought the rating to a AAA rating.
Double.
I'm sorry.
Double.
Double. We went from
Wishful thinking.
a single A to a double A rating. And looking ahead, the bonds are subject to redemption in 6 years. So if things continue to escalate and grow and passenger numbers continue to grow, we would have the ability to redeem those bonds in June of 2025. So keeping that in mind, we really need to take a look at the time frame. We started planning for our Ticket Wing project 3 years ago, and the FAA approved that project almost 2 years ago. So keeping in mind that we could potentially redeem these bonds, we certainly want to keep the flow of PFC funds going. So we should start to plan our next PFC project in 2022, which seems like a long way away, but in reality, it would come very quickly. So that being said, year-end financials are very strong. Nancy Pauley's team at the city will be continuing to look at our PERS accounts, and we were able to set aside additional funds That fund balance for the PERS set aside is at $1.7 million now, so the airport is certainly doing their part to take care of the obligations that we have for PERS future funds.
We have a commissioner that had great interest in the bonds. You want to make a comment to that effect?
Yeah, getting it's a 5-year call, I think, if I read it correctly. Like
I believe it's 6.
6, okay.
Well,
But in any event, getting a 6-year call on the bonds were premium bonds, so they had a 5% coupon, but the yield on the bond was 1.97 on most of them. So you had to pay up substantially to get the bond. You paid a premium for it. But to get a short call on that is pretty darn good. And also the way, just generally the way the deal was structured was well done. Fees were very much on the low side compared to what other issuers of this size pay. So I think it was well done by the finance team.
That means a lot coming from you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions of Mark? No? Okay. Thank you for that report. No action is required on this particular item, but we move into item 11. This is discussion and action items you have in your agenda. Item 11A, we'll take these in 2 parts. This is the Bono Concourse tree replacement, and then 11B is the Recondo Associates contract. So who's going to lead the discussion on?
Would you like me to do so?
Yes, sir.
I would be happy to. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, again. Lights, please. In the late 1990s, the iconic Bono Concourse was constructed. And at that time, well, let's just say this, there's nothing else like the Bono Concourse in the United States. We think that this really is unique and competes from an airport design perspective all over the world. But as you enter the Bono Concourse, you can see in the main atrium in the distance, we can get a little closer here, that we have a set of palm trees around a fountain. Again, just a wonderful vision for the last years. Unfortunately, those trees have grown. Trees do grow. I didn't think palm trees can get that high, but they do. And if you recall, Denver was one of the first airports, well, the first airport in the United States years ago to use a high tensile fabric roof. From the story I heard, we were actually, would have been the first one, but there was a slight delay in some type of development, but we were second in the United States. So that high tensile fabric is a very unique and a very expensive, and it requires a manufacturer, in order to warranty that, they come out every year and make an observation. This year they came out and told us the bad news that we've got trees, at least one tree branch is starting to rub. I don't think anyone's crawled up there. Well, actually he was on the roof peeking in. So with the fabric running or rubbing up against the leaves themselves, that is going to potentially void the warranty for that section of roof. And the option, we got an arborist up to the airport, and the arborist indicated that if you attempt to trim the trees, they're very susceptible. This type of species of trees could die. High likelihood it would die because it shocks it for the reasons aforementioned. And that would mean that they die and then they lose stability. And to remove them, because you cannot get a crane up there, it's all going to have to be handwork. And there would be reluctance on the behalf of any climber to climb a tree that is dead because of the fear of something breaking off. So we're at the point this summer where those have to be removed if we're going to preserve that fabric above. And Mr. Chairman, I leave it to you as far as that discussion about the tree removal.
There you have it. You have the item in there, and the recommendation is to remove the trees and recommend a specific plan of use for the area as we move forward. Are there any questions? Bill?
Just might add, those trees are beautiful. I understand they're too tall. When people get off the airplane, and the first thing they see is that fountain and those beautiful palm trees that signifies Palm Springs in Coachella Valley. Obviously, we're going to have to remove them. And I would suggest that we replace them with shorter trees, and it took them 30 years to get that tall, and let them grow for 30 years again. That would be my comment.
Okay?
I
Thank you,
have a
Bill.
comment, as newcomer, sorry. I use the airport quite often as a frequent flyer. I view that area as more a pass-through area. It's nice, it's open, but you don't pay that much attention. You're focused on exiting the terminal. When you come down the escalator into the open space in the courtyard, there's plenty of opportunity for green spaces and palm trees. I don't really see a huge, I love them there, but I understand the impracticability of them. I actually don't mind losing them there because we have them everywhere else on the property and you see them everywhere else. I don't have a problem with removing them and replacing it with something more usable that we could actually, for people to use, whether it's some type of commission space,
Right.
restaurant, cafe, whatever would fit in that space.
Thank you. Peter?
I would like to make a motion.
Yes, sir?
I make a motion to expand current concession recommendation by eliminating the fountain and trees in the Bona Concourse and replace them with extra concession.
Second.
Motion.
And who seconded? I'm sorry. Okay. Discussion? Yes, sir.
Is that what we're working on here? Because obviously that was the recommendation that came on the concession plan.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the plan, Tom? That we would remove these trees and put this in?
The plan will be dictated by the airport commission
Right.
and the city council, and my interest was only getting the trees down. The question is, what do we do? Do we put temporary trees in, or do we take into account that there'll be an RFP soon for an airport concession? Now, I did, in my last paragraph, I basically took almost verbatim from the operations committee that there was discussion about expanded concessions plans, which Mr. Frymuth just articulated, about using the center Bono space for new concessions. There was quite a bit of discussion on that, given the fact that there is crowding from a seating perspective and no one can sit there, and concessions. We identified in the plan that we need at least about 7,600 additional square feet to meet the needs of the airport going into the future.
So if we agree as a group, we're going to move in that direction, what happens between taking the trees down and when that plan is actually implemented?
Well,
About a year and a
we
half
can
away.
very easily put shrubs in there or even small palm trees in the time being and make it through the season to still have that palm tree look. And then at the time of the new concession award, whereby the firm or firms will do a renovation there, we can relocate those palm trees that easily could be put on a dolly and lifted out, or some other type of greenery. There's also artificial palm trees. I've seen them at pretty nice hotels around them.
No.
No.
I think we can all stipulate to that.
I just mentioned it.
Well, that went over well.
You're talking about the cell towers that are camouflage.
I just mentioned it. I didn't say I was an advocate.
Now you know the parameters. How about other comments, questions, thoughts? You actually made a recommendation, a motion.
Yes.
Was there a second for that
Yes.
motion?
Okay.
And we've got the second. Further discussion on this?
So just on the process, so I wanted the airport commission to weigh in just because I do believe it will be an issue. Obviously, we'd be killing these trees, we'd be chopping them down.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm going to do is put on the council agenda, give them your recommendation. And so some of the options are, obviously, they could remain there till they figure out more what's happening with the concessions. Because obviously that's a potential prime area for concessions. Something, again, I don't know what the answer to that is specifically, but so they could remain there. We could remove them immediately and put something in smaller, would be my sense. But those are sort of the options that we'll be presenting to city council, but they will have your recommendation.
Right, the one thing I would mention though, that what I heard in the report was the arborist said trimming a tree like this would not be particularly effective.
I think we need to get a second opinion. I mean, that's probably absolutely true, but my experience with cutting down trees and council, they probably want a second opinion. So we're going to do that. So one way or another, we got to resolve the issue. The question is, this doesn't have to be done tomorrow. Maybe it's done 6 months from now.
Right, no, that's true.
Yeah, but what about the warranty of the roof? What did the manufacturers say?
Well,
Because replacing that, I assume it's quite expensive to replace that material.
That'd be a correct assumption.
Well, I don't think the trees are gonna pop off the lid, and I can't imagine anything under warranty after 30 years. So I don't know what that means, I guess we have to look into that. But I mean, if it's an urgent issue, I mean, we'll deal with that, but I don't know the actual urgency. I don't know, Tom, you can shed any light on that.
Well, there is rubbing going on there, and could we last another 6-8 months? That's really out of my spectrum of ability, but.
Sort of trees grow like hair.
So, so you're suggesting the city council is likely to want a second opinion?
I'm gonna provide that for them.
Okay,
Yeah, I think
you are
that
going
would
to?
be- Yeah, I think
Okay.
that would be smart to do.
All right, you will do that. Okay. So we can still take action today, though, as
Yeah,
a
your
commission,
recommendation.
as a recommendation.
Let me point out.
Right.
My motion included more than that, because my motion also included taking out the fountain.
Right, it did include fountain. And that was the recommendation of one of the early work groups too. I mean, so that's not a new recommendation coming forward. It's in the last paragraph too, in terms of the replacement of the concession, as part of the concession contract that we were doing too. So taking out the fountain. I see nods both yes and no about the fountain.
I don't understand what we're voting on exactly. The city manager has said something about waiting until we know what's really going on with the concessions. Is that part of the proposal? What's on the table? I don't know.
Well, as I understand the proposal, let me try on this one, Peter, is, I mean, we've got two proposals. One has to do with the concessions, and that RFP is going to be coming out soon, I think.
No.
No, it's not going to be coming out soon. All right.
As soon as practicable.
As soon as practical.
So with regard to the RFP, so we've got the final report from the consultant. It's sort of, you know, it's just there. It is what it is.
Okay.
There's a lot of things to decide, a lot of unanswered questions in that. So we have a general recommendation from the commission. So probably in a September timeframe, September, October, the goal is to have that before the council for a discussion item with your recommendation, and then they will give us some specific direction on how to proceed. But the idea then is to get an RFP out on the street as soon as practical,
Okay.
so it's going to be in the fall timeframe.
All right, well, that's soon.
It's very hard to have an opinion without seeing actual pictures, what the proposals would be, what would be the replacement, is it a better replacement, a better use of the space? Without further information, it's very hard to have any opinion.
Peter, do you want?
Well, we had discussed in the operations committee that, we need more non-aeronautical revenues. I mean, especially when we go into the next item on the airline use agreement, we will see that. And the consultant had pointed out that this is a prime area to generate substantial revenues because it's like a magnet. So.
Okay.
You can see on the board, right there, that was the consultant's rendering of concession for that area.
So, other comments, questions?
One more thing,
Bill?
Peterson. Is our objective to make more money or satisfy the passengers that visit our area?
I think it would be both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, that's a beautiful fountain, a beautiful area when you first walk out off the airplane. You see that, in my opinion, that is valuable to the travelers.
Guillermo?
I think we can have a compromise here. We can have a structure, we can have a living roof, we can have some water feature coming. It's all possible because I see the airport lounges where you have a space where people can feel at peace while they wait for the flight or they just walk by, and at the same time enjoy the beauty of nature and what represents us here in the Coachella Valley and Palm Springs.
Well, I'm sure it can be done. You take the trees out and the fountain out, doesn't mean that it's just empty space. I mean, whatever goes in there, obviously we need to give some thought to it. And just like they designed it initially, there's no way that we can't come up with something that's just as appealing for our passengers. But I don't think that's a decision that we have to make here. Nor are we qualified to make.
Well, we have a motion on the table right now.
Could you repeat that?
Yes, would you?
I don't understand what we're voting on.
Yeah, you want to restate the motion, Peter?
Make a motion to expand current concession recommendation by eliminating the fountains and trees in the Monarch Concourse.
Okay.
And there was a second to that. Any further discussion? We need to take a vote on this one. That either it's going to fly or not fly. Anybody need any further clarification on the recommendation, motion that's up before?
To clarify, it's a motion that we're looking at proposals and to eliminate it, it will absolutely be eliminated, but we don't know what it will be replaced with.
No.
That's very hard to.
Well, I mean, the idea that it wouldn't make any sense to replace it if we didn't already know that we want to put a concessionaire in that space. If that were not the case, then there wouldn't be any reason to remove it.
Okay.
I mean, the only reason to remove the fountain, the trees may be another issue, but also the fountain, is to put in this new concession which will generate substantial non-aeronautical revenues, which if we go into this discussion that comes on later on a new hybrid sort of airline use agreement, where the airlines no longer take 100% of the risk. So then it is incumbent upon us to make sure that the revenues are there, that we don't have a shortfall, because if we change the agreement, we don't have the guarantee for the residual cost.
Yes.
Does that help clarify?
I'll make sure that somehow we address all of our concerns as far as passenger experience, making it a pleasant environment, generating revenue. Those are my parameters.
Well, I mean, we can
There must
maybe
be a
tie it
compromise.
in, that, this is eliminated for concession. If the concessions don't go in there, then
We still have to resolve the trees.
Yeah.
Right, we still have to resolve it.
So, and I should have said this with my comments earlier about the bond deal. In the official statement, and I think everybody's got copies, maybe some of the new members don't, there is a feasibility study that was prepared about the airport in the next several years. And I highly encourage everyone to read that. I mean, it's a rather conservative study. It shows very low growth the next 5 to 6 years, fractional compared to what we're experiencing in the current economy. But it also gives you the idea of the fiscal constraints that the airport is facing as it moves forward. And it's a great way to get your hands around what's going on fiscally and also economically with the airport. And it was based on the operations committee taking some of these fiscal constraints that we're going to be facing in the future, that we needed to expand the amount of revenue we get from concessionaires by adding concessionaires and also increasing the rents that current concessionaires pay.
Kevin?
So David, the thing I don't understand is if we do this today, and I support this, you take this to the city council and they will have the second opinion on the trees, and then they will say, fine, take this step. And that allows us to address the tree problem, but I don't understand how this connects to when we get the RFP done and the overall commitment to the concession strategy. I mean, how does this fit in terms of what the city council approves now versus when that RFP is ready?
Yeah, it does and it doesn't. I mean, the trees are a discrete issue. And so the question is, ideally, can you leave the trees in until we get a more global discussion and direction on what concession is going to be there, if anything? So that would be ideal. If not, then we're going to have to take the trees out immediately and just leave them blank or put something else in the interim. So those are those are sort of like two discrete things. But it is clearly an area that is ripe for discussion on whether you're going to have a whole different kind of passenger concession experience. And I do think council is probably wants to explore that. So they're sort of separate, but I do think the first thing is we got to deal with the trees. Yeah. So can the trees basically stay there for 6, 8 months until we make a decision? That's the question. Now, maybe we can trim them a little bit if we have to, but if they die, then that's another, then.
Takes care of the problem.
That's the problem. Or maybe we don't have to do anything. So that's why I want a second opinion, because I do think council will have those kinds of questions. So I'll deal with the trees, and the discussion item on the concession is clearly gonna be an important part of that, but subsequently.
Does that alter the motion at
We
all?
get the second opinion from you, right? We don't have to do that.
We'll get the second opinion, but not from me, but from our representative.
Right.
Through you.
Yes.
Through you.
Do you want to modify your motion at all then, or you want to continue with the way it is presented?
If somebody would like to modify, go ahead.
Well,
Go ahead, Ken.
so I make a motion that we look at removing the trees temporarily and replace them with something else until a final decision is made on the fountain tree issue.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can live with that.
Yeah.
All right, so-
What Ken said is what I was gonna say. The trees right now are a problem. There's no doubt about that. Let's take out the trees now and then wait for what happens with the concession and leave the fountain there, because I think that fountain is beautiful when you walk out and see it right in the middle of the circle there. So I would say remove the trees, depending on the second opinion. Leave the fountain where it is until we decide what to do about the concession.
I think that was a motion, no?
Yes.
So that was Ken, basically, okay, so you modified,
I will second.
you're withdrawing your initial motion then? Yes? Or you
No,
modifying?
he has a new motion,
Okay.
so it doesn't matter.
No, we have to do something with the first motion that was
There
out
we go.
down.
So.
Oh, no,
you have
I
to
withdraw my motion.
Thank you. Okay, that motion is withdrawn and you're withdrawing your second
And
to
I'll
his
second
motion.
his motion.
And now you've made a new motion and Peter
I'll
is,
second.
okay, I just want to keep it all clear. All right, so you want to restate the motion one more time so everybody's.
So the motion is to remove the trees, put in something temporary, whatever the airport decides, and to make a final decision on what happens once we work out a plan for the central part of the terminal.
Okay, and Peter has seconded that. Any other further discussion on this item?
Hi, I was listening to the passenger experience point of view, and I'm just wondering if we could just put the artwork there.
I'm sorry?
I was just wondering if it might be possible to consider that area for the new artwork that we were talking about earlier.
That's a whole nother question. We're gonna stay on this issue right now. We're having but thank you for that. That's something to consider going down the road. All right, are anyone ready to call for the motion yet?
Call for the motion.
Okay, all those in favor of Ken's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, it's unanimous, okay? We've taken care of that item. Thank you. That was a good discussion, actually, I think, moving us down the road. So now we move on to 11B, which is the Recondo Associates contract. That is in your agenda. The recommendation is to continue to recommend that they continue to provide professional services with the formulation of the new Palm Springs Airport use and a lease agreement at a total not to exceed $120,416. And there is a staff analysis. Would you like, Pete?
I'd be happy to,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Well, as you may recall, maybe not, we hired Recondo Associates, which specializes in airport financing and does work at airports around the country. They were intimately involved in our recent bond issue, and they also were contracted to conduct what we consider phase one of our airport use and lease agreement with the airlines, because that is now coming to an end. We are extending that agreement until the end of the project, but Recondo services for the new airline agreement, well, let's talk about the old services. They immersed themselves in the 2004 document. Just for a little history on this, the existing airline use agreement, I'll refer to as AULA, was actually a byproduct of a 2004 agreement. It was a great agreement for its time, and it has withstood the test of time. However, there are industry practices and other changes here at the airport about to occur with the new project that are going to warrant us to reevaluate, I think Mr. Frank referred to it earlier, the arrangement with the airlines in order to have both the lessor and the lessee share in an equitable obligation to run the airport. We talked about revenue in the last equation. That is always a big issue for the airport. May I remind everyone that one of the things that has contributed to the success of this airport is its low cost per enplanement. We're currently at about $5 per passenger as a metric used by the airlines. Ontario is about $10 or $11. When we compare ourselves with the rest of the country, we're in probably the lower half, maybe even 30 percentile. And that is a factor that helps keep us attractive, because the seasonality factor is not an attractive. So when the airlines can say this airport is fiscally well run by generating other revenues and offsetting the obligation to the airlines, that helps a lot. However, with the introduction of the new ticketing wing modernization project, we are introducing high technology in baggage handling systems. That represents about $13 million of that project. That is going to incur additional costs. We're going to have additional staff for IT and also maintenance on board in order to continue that system. This is inherent in all baggage handling systems. We're also introducing shared use. If anyone is familiar with that, that's using technology to allow airlines to share in the utilization of ticket counters. Eventually we'll get to the gates. That's very important because it allows us to avoid costly bricks and mortar. But that whole analysis was done, and the consultant in short terms basically said that it's time to take that old agreement and introduce the changes that are going to occur at the airport, and also look at where the industry has a standard practice in the relationship between airlines and so forth. So the proposed scope of services would be the finalizer rates and charges model. There's a number of different models. We could talk about this for hours, but our model currently can be changed in a manner that is more conducive, again, more consistent with airline standards, and to address those costs I alluded to. It is important we have a stellar relationship with our airline partners, but when there is a negotiation on something so important like the change in an agreement, it is always very good, not that we couldn't do it, but it's also very good to have a mediator, somebody that has done it at airports around the country, so that in the course of those negotiations, if the airlines reference another airport, that mediator, who's Recondo Associates, can say, we're familiar with that situation, here are the pros and cons and values applicable to Palm Springs International Airport. They would help us draft an initial legal document with provisions, revise business methodology, and prepare and participate in 5 airline meetings. Now, our friends that just joined the commission, I spent time with you in the last couple of days. You both have an extensive airline background.
Yes.
You know that airlines don't move quickly when it's in regards to an agreement at an airport. It has to go up 15 chains through the command. So that's going to take, we've been told between a year and a half, once we agree on a set of terms, that in order to vet it through the process. Am I correct in that assessment? Peter, you ran an airline, so that is correct. So that would be very important to have a consultant keep us on track and to also follow that as well, and facilitate the execution of the new airline agreement. Revenue breakout, we've got our landing fees, our airport, airline terminal rent, special capital projects. One of the things I'll say is that we've somewhat been inhibited in the past of doing certain capital projects. I won't even name a few, but there have been a few where the airlines have actual say into whether or not we can proceed with that. Now, what we see in the industry is more versatility on behalf of the airport to be able to have more say in their capital project needs and not rely so much on the signatory carriers. There's a fine balance between that arrangement, but we certainly have to get more latitude in that respect because of obvious reasons. We're a growing airport.
I have one
Yes, sir.
question on the landing fees. Is it anticipated in the new agreement that we have a way of periodically adjust landing fees?
We do. One of the things we'll do in this new agreement is focus more on the cost center analysis. That means we will give a geographic boundary to the airfield and only apply all the costs associated with that. We have somewhat of a hybrid now, but it's not really defined. that consultant will help us, and therefore that cost center, whenever there is a variance in the expenditure, whether it's up or down, will be adjusted accordingly and charged to the airlines accordingly. Mr. Chairman, cost per enplanement, I alluded to earlier, we are going to experience an increase. That's just part of the nature. Even at the height in 2024, we're still extremely competitive. But we are a growing airport, and residual cost, we could get into a lot of this, Mr. Chairman, but we talked about residual cost per enplanement and passenger and so forth. That is a scaled down version of the cost per plane passenger. Isn't this exciting? This is the schedule that we are prognosticating for the consultant on board, and that takes us out into 2021 of January. So again, one of the advantages of a consultant is to make sure we are keeping on board with procedures and processes as we move through the negotiation process. And that's a blank board, so Mr. Chairman, in a nutshell, that's what it is. May I also say it's time and material, and I think you're all aware how staff is very tight with funding, and we always watch that very closely. It may take half that effort, it may be depending on the negotiation process itself, so.
Very good. Yes, sir.
So Tom, just for the record and for the board, I always have a little heartburn with the cost of these consultants. They roll and keep going on and on and on and on. But why this, and why not go for an RFP and do another? And I'm comfortable with the reasons why, based on what we've talked about. If you could just share with everyone why this is the company to go with, and two, is this an appropriate price based on the industry standards?
Yes, sir. A year and a half ago, a few of you sat on the selection committee for consultants, and we selected 3 consultants from a nationwide solicitation. Recondo Associates is on that team.
That's right.
So they are actually they have been validated, and they just did our bond issue, the feasibility study, which I think the performance-wise. So as far as the process, we did not just pull this consultant out of the air. They're on the team. In fact, Recondo is also slated to do our car rental bond issue, which that's going to be a more expensive project than the ticketing. In regards to the pricing, and I agree wholeheartedly with the city manager, Mark, can you elaborate on what we've done to make sure that that fee they propose is in alignment with?
They gave a pretty detailed breakdown on the cost. I thought it looked very reasonable.
So we've done a comparison with Palm Beach Airport, which does over 4 million passengers, and the costs are very much in line with Palm Beach. They did a new agreement in Palm Beach 5 years ago, and Palm Beach hired them again to do a refresh, which is expected to be completed in October. In addition to that, they're currently working with Sun Valley for a new agreement there. So they kind of work both ends of the spectrum. Palm Beach is larger than us, Sun Valley is smaller than us. Sun Valley, of course, a small airport, has other challenges. We're sandwiched in between. The price point certainly is one that we consider very carefully. I think Mr. Hendrick mentioned a great model that they did with the feasibility. It's a great read. They did provide a conservative approach, which I think is something we want to go into this with, as you mentioned, the fact that in the past we've had a totally residual agreement, there's a shortfall, the airlines pay for it. We plan to come up with somewhat of a hybrid so that we share the responsibility. But in that case, we would not expect to exceed this amount of money. Last time we did this, we had, of course, a series of local meetings, and I would expect that we'll have phone calls with the airlines every week to answer questions and follow up. So we will certainly do everything in our power to bring this under the budget, not exceed that amount, but looking at the comparison, it's reasonable.
And also the FAA approves this agreement?
No, we're not using FAA funds. There's no federal funds involved with this.
This is not eligible.
We did bid this out within the 5-year, 3-year stage went out to bid, so it was a competitive process at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one question for Mark. If we go to this hybrid agreement, what are potential implications on raising, if we want to raise the bonds? What's the impact on that versus the residual agreement?
Well, currently, we don't have any GARBs. We don't have any general airport revenue bonds. The only bond we have is the new PFC obligation. In the future, we're going to have various capital needs, as we all know.
But still, doesn't it still tie in even if you use PFC when it comes to the weighting?
Well, I mean, it's complicated. The good thing is Recondo is one of the firms that the rate agencies like and has their approval. So you're operating with someone as a known entity. As far as the rating goes, the rating will be based on airport management, which you saw in the credit report that was passed around. The rating agencies commended the airport's management here, and also stated that we could possibly be in for an upgrade at some point in the future. The second thing they're going to look on any new bond issues is your revenues versus how much debt service you have, what's your coverage factor. So this whole idea of this document that they sent is a little complicated, but they're going to look at basically how much revenue we have and how much we're going to be spending on debt service and the coverage factor. That's going to be the primary thing. But I highly recommend that people read this and also read the feasibility study, which is in the official statement.
Right. Any other questions? Is there any motion? Recommendation
Yeah.
to follow? Are you making a
I
motion?
make the recommendation to follow the staff recommendation.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second.
Ken we have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. I need to do something unusual. I have to leave. I'm not allowed to drive because of what I had to take in preparation for the periodontal work. So Tom, as secretary, is going to do the balance of the meeting if that meets with your approval. I really apologize. This is unusual for me to do, but I'm just at the mercy of the doctor.
Good luck. Drive safe, or ride safe.
Yes.
So where we stand is.
Yeah, well, I took the Xanax a half an hour ago, and I'm starting to feel
I
it,
actually
so.
looked down at the time, so we've got a motion on the floor.
Wait, no, the motion's done. It's done.
It's done, that's right,
Yeah,
thank you
we're
very
done.
much. So we're gonna move on to the next item, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good
Now
luck.
to the executive director report.
Who's that?
I'll get a follow-up.
I do have a small report. That is for the new members' sake. This, yeah, he's always very, very thorough. So with that being said, I always have a number of reports. As you know, the bonds were sold. We on the way. The City Council is hearing next on the July 24th the issue of providing a contract to Swinnerton Contractors, which was the selectee from the solicitation, and at the same time, the construction management for that project. Swinnerton is raring to go. With council approval, we'll issue that notice to proceed. And right out of the box is going to be the development of the baggage handling system because of its 6 to 9 month lead time. In addition to that, we're going to execute a change order right off the bat to complete, as mandated by council, an expansion of the checkpoint, hopefully in time for this season. So that's going to be one phase of a very important project. The brunt of the construction, though, won't occur until about May of 2020, but a lot of work in regards to that. So another report we have are, I alluded to in the budget that the State Water Board of California issued to all airports a letter to ask for a one-time investigation of the groundwater in regards to the aircraft firefighting foam that has been used at airports for decades. And I had prognosticated that the fee will be in the $300,000 to $400,000 range, and that is true. We'll be bringing that to City Council for approval because we're on a deadline to do that. So, and that cost includes putting in water monitoring wells, doing samples, an extensive array of analysis. Airports all over California are going through the same exercise. It's good. We want to be a sustainable and environmentally friendly airport. Contour Airlines will be serving Sacramento. daily on a 30-seat regional jet. We thank our friends at the CVB for the collaborative effort, because by the end of the day, they got very intimately involved. I don't know if you can comment on that at all, or?
Daily service to Sacramento.
Yes, but as far as the CVB's involvement, there probably is some monetary incentivization on there,
Well,
in addition to what we're doing.
And I can share that the CVB is actively underwriting this, in other words, they're
That's
guaranteeing.
Precisely.
minimum number of
So
seats.
everybody.
Without them, that would have never happened.
So everybody should vacation in Sacramento more than you do. Seating, Ulysses, why don't you give us a brief update on the new seating we're ordering?
We are hopefully, we're in the process of putting together a council report for the 24th in order to buy seating to replace all of the seats inside of the Bono, which is about 520 seats there, and then add an additional 80 seats down at the regional concourse, and many of those seats will have also electrical power right next to the seats themselves. So we're on target to try to complete that by the end of this calendar year.
Yes, thank you very much. As soon as we award, or City Council awards the construction contract for ticketing, we will bring before this board the design contract for the car rental facility. So we got to keep the ball rolling here. That has really been negotiated. It's been over a course of a couple of years, and it had already been vetted with our airline, with our car rental partners. So, and it'll be brought to the commission for action, then to City Council as well. Year over year, 12%. Year over year month. Year to date is 15.9%. We're cautiously optimistic. The 737 issue still. Do you want to comment on that? Go ahead.
Well, I mean, the problem seems to be getting bigger because now the Europeans have found another problem with the autopilot, and so who knows what's going on there. And the Belgians actually have come out and declared that the MAX will not fly this year, period.
So those are the little issues, and of course, we're always very cautiously optimistic. We're pleased with the growth, but cautiously optimistic whether or not that'll continue. That basically, Mr. Chairman, concludes the reports. Item number 13, Commissioner requests and reports, please. Yes, sir.
On behalf of Michael McCall, can we schedule a meeting of the landscape committee?
We'd be happy to. I could provide a brief overview of that real quick.
Sure.
So the sustainability committee, the ad hoc, basically came to a conclusion that we should hire a design firm to pick up the old program of sustainable, which bid out at that time for about $4 million, and to reanalyze that, make it more consistent with the city council, the baseline for sustainable landscaping and mediums and so forth, and apply it here at the airport, and come up with a program that systematically over the course of maybe 3 to 6 years can do something affordable on a year-to-year basis. So the money that was appropriated in the budget, 150, would probably be the cost of a consultant to provide that whole process over the next several years and so forth. So until we have something definitive on that, I'm actually getting a price from a local architect that the city council acknowledges on doing business. When I have something, we'd be happy to have another meeting.
Now that Michael is gone from the commission, who is chairing the committee?
I'll let the chair decide that. I think he's going to, elected as a new chair for this year, decide on committee organization. Any other commissioner reports or comments, requests?
Here. Tom.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to report, excuse me, that we had a noise committee meeting after the last meeting, and a few things were decided. We're going to have regular noise committee meetings instead of just having them sporadically. They're going to be after our regular meeting every third month, so March and the 6th month, June. And so that was decided. You might also want to take a look on the airport's website. We now have more information about noise issues, and Tom was very helpful in getting that on the website. So I think that will help maybe some in explaining to the community about noise issues at the airport. And also we talked about some changes to the ordinance that creates the noise committee. The noise committee is the only committee of the airport commission that actually has an ordinance that requires it to exist. But it's a little outdated, so we discussed some changes to that will be going through the process.
Yes, sir, that's right. Anyone else? Report of the city council actions on page 14A and 14B. You'll have past and the future, there's a description and information there. Correspondence, no additional correspondence other than that was provided today on the art, and that'll come up at a future item. Receive and file the June activity reports and August airline schedules. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Cochran and Reason, thank you very much. Thank you for time out of your busy day.